Well, hi, Tyler. Thank you so much for coming on to the show today. I am so excited to dive in. Tyler, my first question for you, let's start from the very beginning. How did your post-secondary experience lead you to where you are today?
Thanks again for having me on the show here. It's a pleasure. And yeah, jumping right in there, I would almost go from my high school experience. I just always been lucky to have been surrounded myself with really keen, ambitious people all the way from the beginning. From post-secondary and university too, I had a lot of very supportive friends. So my current group of co-founders, I've actually met them through a mutual friend that I met in secondary school. And he is also one of those keen people who really want to do a startup. And that's how we've networked. And it's just the people. So a lot of it is luck, really. I can't deny the fact that I am very lucky to be in the opportunity I am in today, but it's also about maximizing your opportunities, your chances. And there are things you can do to increase the probability of things working out, right? You do everything right, and sometimes things still don't work out. That's unfortunate, but yeah, there are ways to set yourself up for success there. I'm really glad for the school I went to, people I've met there. Some of our earliest employees are my friends from the University of Toronto. And yeah, they've contributed a lot to the product. So yeah, I'd say that's how I would kick things off there.
So you met your co-founders through a mutual friend in university.
Yes, we didn't even go to the same university. So the mutual friend went to Western University. I went to the University of Toronto. We just knew each other from high school. And most of my co-founders didn't go to my university either. They were actually all part of a program called Next 36. So this was a incubator. Highly recommend it. It's a great program. If you're based out in Toronto or in Canada, it's a great program to get into. You don't even need an idea. It's just more signing up, and it's based on getting you paired up with other ambitious individuals.
So did you always know that you will become a co-founder or entrepreneur one day?
I think if you ask anyone around me, they'd say yes. I've always tried doing startups, even since high school. I've had at least two attempts during high school and one in university. I think you might remember one of the earlier ones. It was called, I used to do Model United Nations back in high school. So it's an opportunity that everyone there was in like liberal arts, and there weren't a lot of developers or programmers in that field. And the software they're using was terrible. It was just like Microsoft products and phone timers and things. So I built a software platform for that. It still makes money today, which is kind of funny, but I was trying making a social network. So I'd avoid, just my word of advice for everyone doing startups: social networks are very difficult. So yeah, there's that. And I've tried a few things in university. So I think I've always wanted to do something and make a product that contributes and brings a lot of value to people.
I think I remember this. Is it like a timer thing for Model United Nations?
Yeah, it's basically, so Model United Nations is a parliamentary debate format, and there's a lot of like procedures and timers and how you can like yield time to other people and things to track your progress. I know there's like real software for actual parliaments out there, but at least for students, there isn't anything. So it was just a cheap product. It was $5 per committee per conference. So that's how it would work.
And you're still making money from it to this
Mhm.
day.
Yes, although I haven't been supporting it. My co-founder from that project has taken over at this stage, but yeah, it's been good.
Is this young?
This is Young Lee, yes.
I need to hit up Young sometimes. Okay, so tell us about the creation of your current venture, Voiceflow.
Right, fun journey. So I met my co-founders. Three of us were still in university. We had 1 year left. So we're all born 97 or 96. But that summer, they were all part of Next 36. They needed an engineer at the time, and it was the end of the summer. I was wrapping up an internship and had nothing to do for about 2 weeks. So I figured, why not? I'll just give this a shot. What I was really impressed by my co-founders was their mentality and how much dedication they put in. I saw their grind. They were the real deal. They were willing to work 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, the entire first year, basically. And I think just in my past experience, I've always just felt people have been flaky, or like commitment wise, it's always hard to find right people. Like you're finding the right co-founders is incredibly difficult, especially the fact that we have four co-founders and we're still in it together 4 years later is pretty incredible. For the company itself, the original idea, we had a ton of so ideas. One was like PIPO, like people IPO. You'd like sell shares of your time or something like that. Yeah, there are all sorts of ideas out there, but eventually we settled on bedtime stories for children on Alexa. So what that means is parents would outsource their bedtime stories. Instead of telling kids bedtime stories, they just ask Alexa to tell their kids bedtime stories. And these would be choose your own adventure, interactive stories. Do you want to go into the ocean or go inside the cave or something like that, right? Kids loved it. It was really fun. It was a big learning process for us. It sounds like kind of like a juvenile idea, but kids entertainment is actually a huge space. What is the most watched YouTube video of all time? Baby Shark, right? Kids will watch things over and over. They will try things over. They get really hooked on something, and it's a big space, believe it or not. Yeah, there are also tons of regulations there as well. And a lot of our strategy initially was just to be like the Netflix for kids content on Alexa, because at that time Alexa was like rocket ship. Every like 1 in 3 American families, I think, had some type of like voice device in their home. So I thought it was a huge opportunity, right? And a lot of it just centered around how much content could we put out, how many stories could we put out every week. It was like a subscription service. And Mike, my co-founder, was the one doing a lot of the editing and writing for these stories. And I was writing the code for these. Coding these stories was just not fun from a programmer's perspective. I don't even had a chance to try coding, but if you imagine an interactive story, it's basically what we call a state machine. You'd be writing, if user says this, do this, else if do this, else if do this, else if do this, else, right? You're just writing these like conditional statements. You have to keep track of all these things in your head. What's their HP? What's their, like, a lot of video games do this today too. Yeah. So we actually ended up building a tool to make these stories faster. And the tool was really good. And we kept iterating over the tool, and we could pump out stories, 2-3 stories a week. Eventually children's stories authors would come to us and say like, hey, could I white label my book on your platform? I know you have this great tool. And there were other tools in the space as well, but we felt like we were definitely the superior tool at the time. We were pretty confident in that. And I think at some point the colleagues were just turning, it's like, oh, maybe the real product here is the tool we built to make these stories. So we used to be called Storyflow, and that's how we turned into Voiceflow. So that's the story there. But yeah, obviously, kind of as the company grows and evolves, the challenges definitely shift as well.
Challenges. Let's go into that. What would you say was the hardest challenge that you overcame in your startup journey?
There's a new challenge every time you grow as your company gets larger. I think your skill set and whatever you do completely changes. Your responsibilities become different. You get more responsibilities as well. For example, in the beginning, I was just a software programmer. I didn't have to manage people. I just wrote code all day, 10 hours a week. And that's something I loved and enjoyed. But as we got bigger, eventually I had to start thinking about teams, working with other people, managing people between teams, communicating between teams, and all these things, right? Organizational structure was something that took us a long time to get just from our initial stage. And yeah, that's been a valuable lesson in terms of leveling up for sure.
What did you find the most intriguing and interesting throughout the process of making Voiceflow into a reality?
Just how big of a market there is for what we do. So when you think of large companies, you think you know most of them, like Fortune 500 companies. You think you can recognize most of them. There are so many companies out there, so many potential clients, customers. It's a very big ocean out there. I've learned about so many new industries just from the people that come into Voiceflow. We're really lucky because we're a very horizontal platform. It's just anywhere where humans can chat with or converse with computers, really. For example, McDonald's uses us to prototype drive-thrus, automating drive-thrus, or BMW uses us for in-car assistance, so talking to your car, or Mattel uses us for Barbie toys. Like toys, drive-thrus, cars, completely different sectors, right? And I found that really interesting, just learning about the various industries and kind of the use cases that would get applied. So that was great.
That's incredible. That's so cool. Now, the next question is a little bit different, and I'm so excited to hear your thoughts on this. Product market fit. That's what you hear all the time in the entrepreneurship space. I think a lot of times people get excited about an idea and create this awesome thing, but the market ends up not having the same reaction or excitement. What advice do you have on this topic for entrepreneurs?
You have to be okay with pivoting many times. And I think I've been guilty of this in the past as well. Many founders or kind of startup people get really attached to their idea, and it's only fair because it's their baby, right? That's your child. You feel like you cannot change it. You're adamant. You're like, this is your future. This is the path forward. There's no, I am correct for sure. And everyone else just doesn't get it. You have to be okay with pivoting. And even it doesn't have to toss everything out the window. It's just like seeing kind of what sticks. I think one big thing that happened to us, we were originally meant for Alexa. So we, even after the children's stories part, we were still a tool for building on Alexa. But we saw Alexa actually start to stagnate a bit in terms of the space. But we saw a lot of people coming in using us just a prototype. So we had the tool, People didn't care about the Alexa part. They would just come on, they would build something on Voiceflow just to try it out before they actually wrote the code down. And these were large companies that were doing it, like the customer support division at Verizon were just on us, an Alexa tool, try and prototype, right? So that's kind of one of those things where if you see kind of something picking up on the edge or on the periphery, maybe roll with it and be able to move quick in directions. And I think it's ultimately the data. Like if people aren't willing to put the money down for your product, sometimes you have to adjust. It's difficult for sure. And sometimes you might just be flat out wrong. Maybe this entire space is not good. It's tough, but it's worth consideration.
Tyler, can you share with aspiring entrepreneurs the process of how Voiceflow got investors?
Yeah, I think it always just starts with meeting people. There's no way around that. It's just maximizing the amount of people in your network and how many people you know and you can meet that can refer you to others. A lot of VC firms obviously will take cold referrals. Like you can just email them. They will gladly hear your pitch. Many analysts will reach out to you as well. But nothing's better than just having like a soft introduction from someone they know. We met our seed round investor, I believe, because the CEO of Product Hunt invested in us because I think through some other methods, and they introduced us to someone else who introduces someone else, and so on the chain of things, right? And eventually you get there. There's also a great book I would totally recommend. Actually, my girlfriend's a lawyer who's works at startups. She recommended this book to myself, and I think that's given me a lot of clarity about everything. It's called Venture Deals. Be smarter than your lawyer and venture capitalist. Yeah, it's a great book. I would totally recommend for anyone who wants to understand how the VC world works, how startups, how fundraising rounds work, and all the intricacies of that. It's not even too long either, so it's a great book.
Can you just repeat the title again?
Yeah, it's called Venture Deals. Be smarter than your lawyer and venture capitalist.
Awesome. I'm going to go read that afterwards. So, regarding the pitch, Tyler, what made the biggest difference in the winning pitch for you?
I think stick with a central idea or theme. Your product is good. You don't have to have 10 different points that you're trying to make. Maybe those 10 points are contributing towards one central point, but it's very clear kind of what you're pitching on. Sometimes it's based around your revenue. That's less likely for earlier stage startups, but sometimes it's about the product, the vision you have, just making sure that's cohesive and unified. And also just being able to read the room, knowing the space, knowing being prepared for any criticisms, because it's their job basically to be able to poke holes and try to ask any questions there, right? So try to make sure everything's answered. Like the common ones are just going to be what's your competition? What's the space already like? Things like that. You have to give genuine, serious answers about that versus just dismissing it or anything like that. Putting in a solid effort to investigate the market and on your deck. Your deck is the holy grail. You have to make sure it's good. We stressed it and stress tested. We've gone through so many iterations. Things change all the time. Sometimes you have specific decks just for certain people. The deck is very important. Make sure it looks good too. That's important. It can't look bad either from a graphic design standpoint.
You talked about reading the room, and I think that reminds me of almost reading people. What advice do you have on that? How do you read the room?
Sometimes it's just being able to accept that someone's not for you. You're just knowing it's not going to work out, because more often than not, I think it's not every single person you talk to is going to be instantly on board and subscribe to your idea. There will be people who have doubts. There will be people who are more than enthusiastic about it. So it certainly varies. Reading the room is just initial, even before the meeting, you might be talking to a partner. You can see how enthusiastic they are. You can just gauge by certain, it's tiny little imperceptible details, just how people write their messages, how they're talking to you and conversing with you, that you can gauge their interest through. It's just an attitude thing as well.
So do you get to speak to these investors before the pitch?
Usually get a short introduction just by email and things like that. If you get a chance, sometimes it's a partner that's presenting your company to other people at their firm. So you get to try out that initial partner first. You just have to sell everyone else there too, right? It's not just one person. Yeah.
The reason I'm asking this is because, when I worked at Deloitte, they taught us this thing called business chemistry. And it's basically learning how to read someone's business personality or what their needs are within a short 10-minute conversation. So I'm thinking if startups are able to talk to investors before the pitch, Can you like name drop the key themes and then figure out, oh, okay, so this is the makeup of the room. This room is mainly interested in hearing about our revenue or another topic. Could that be a good approach, do you think?
Yeah. But I think your pitch would still generally the same between all firms. I think your story would be the same.
So,
Yeah.
side question now. What was the most interesting key takeaway from this whole process for you?
In terms of the fundraising process or the entire startup process.
Fundraising process.
Yeah, just how much of a people thing it is. You have to number of people you have to meet, people you have to touch base with. And yeah, I think it's just like a whole world in itself, right? It's like an entire specialization, things that people work in the VC world. It's just something you have to understand. It's nothing will prepare you for it unless you've just been in it and have experienced it. I don't mean to dissuade anyone or to scare anyone away from it. It's just like there are a lot of nuances, a lot of things that it's just something you have to get into. And yeah, the more you understand, the more you kind of understand the terms and start seeing it around and getting that. And just knowing the procedures and things makes a difference. And that's why a lot of people are repeat founders, just because they've already experienced this world. They know how to fundraise. They've been through this process and they have that experience. That'll get you a leg ahead for sure.
So, Tyler, if you can share 3 important tips, in your opinion, on fundraising, what would those 3 tips be?
Being able to walk away from a table if like people don't like it and also something doesn't match or there's some misalignment, just being able to take no for an answer is good. I've had a lot of heartbreaking no's. I think for us, one of the earliest ones was like YC. From the beginning, it was like get into YC. That was it. And every no from YC is like a dagger in your heart. It's like that whole process in the beginning. I can remember just like stayed up all night practicing, rehearsing. Our entire hotel is just full of like YC applicants, and like there's another like company on the other room, and we're just like pitching to each other on the balcony with each other and stuff. It was like some crazy stuff like that. But yeah, even when like that takes no, like be adamant, have resolve, kind of keep going, even when it's tough, because you might find someone who will say yes. It's not, and the majority of people might say no, and it's fine. Second of all, be sure to keep your options open. So what happens at the end of a fundraising round is a term sheet. You get some options. It's good to have multiple options on the table if possible. Otherwise, yeah, knowing your terms, being able to do the research and seeing what current climate is, what's a good term, what's not a good term for your company. Because like it's very arbitrary in the early stage because there's nothing to really quantify your company based on, right? If you don't have revenue, like you're not making money. You just have a product, and who knows how much this product makes, right? It could be 10 million, it could be 5 million, it could be 11 million. That like what extra 1 million is somewhat arbitrary. You just have to think about what is good, what gets you far. And also here's the other thing too. My last point, I guess, tip is it's not about raising funds and always raising funds. Some people just think the only goal or milestone of a startup is to raise money. It's like series seed round. Now we got to get to series A. Now I got to get to series B. It's just how many rounds you can raise. Sometimes raising a round could be bad for your company because it sets the expectations really high. If you raise too early, it sets the expectations so high that it becomes very hard to reach your next round. So if you raise your series B, let's say like a ridiculous multiple, like super high, it makes it hard to reach your series C depending on the economic situation, especially today when it's a lot harder now. But to reach series C, there's another set of expectations, but you've never even met the expectations of an average series B company, then like it's even further down the road, right? And a lot of people can burn money too fast. It's about managing your burn rate and money as well. So I'd say that too. Like it's not always good to raise a fund. It's not always good to take money. It's strategic. Who you take money from is also very important too. People who have expertise in the space, people who can offer advice. Sometimes it's worth taking less money, but from the right people.
Can you expand on that about taking money from the right people? What do you mean by that, Tyler?
People who have experience operating. So like a lot of VC firms have built a reputation, especially in the Valley. They have a lot of experience. They have a lot of great exits. They have resources that will help you out. So yeah, a lot of our investors have offered great resources. So people who have consulted us with human resources, how procedures, things like that, how to handle hiring, or even helped us with inbound funneling, and other people like sales leads. The introductions that they can make is huge. Some of our angel investors, for example, one person is Dylan Field. He's the CEO of Figma, which is like in a very similar space. They sold to Adobe, I believe, last year, and CEO of Eventbrite. Like a lot of these people that are in a similar space to you in the software space, for example, who can offer you introductions, who can help you out. And that makes a big difference. Yeah.
So maybe let me rephrase this question. Money is money after all, right? What could go wrong if you take money from people who aren't experts?
What could go really wrong is they own shares of your company now, for example. And to some extent, if you raise it around from certain people, maybe just like from an angel, they have a board seat. They have an actual input on your company and what you should be doing. Now you have someone else telling you what you should be doing. And if you don't align with them on what you want to do, that can become a huge issue, right? Because to them, it's their money and they want to see it deployed in the best way possible. But to you, that's a different avenue. And when you have these like disagreements, it could be quite bad.
Wow, thank you for that. I'm sure that was very, very insightful, especially for people who are newbies like myself in the VC and fundraising world. Thank you for breaking that down for us, Tyler. Now, the last question for you. What are the main traits and skills someone aspiring to enter the tech industry and startup world should develop?
I mean, the tech industry, just having some background knowledge of tech, keeping your pulse on the latest and greatest. Things move so fast in tech, right? Every year there's something new. Every year we have to like rethink our strategy because some new technology comes out. ChatGPT came out last year, and before that, GPT-3. Things evolve so fast. It's just making sure that you're on top of things. You know what's the latest and what you're doing. Like if you're jumping on the social network, nothing against like social networks, but like it's a little late for like apps or social networks today. Maybe there is a specific app you think about, but I guess things that become trendy or hot happen overnight and they just develop all the time. It's just being able to keep a pulse on that. You just need to know the surface level technology. Like you don't have to go deep. You don't have to understand exactly how AI works, but being competent in like its limitations, being knowing what it can do and potentially what avenues are is pretty important. Networking, obviously, it's just meeting the right people is important. Just having the good people around you for sure. And yeah, I think just tenacity, having the ability to push through. Things are tough. It's going to be a roller coaster ride. If you're looking for stability, I think startups are not it, especially if you want to be a founder. There are ups and downs. There's going to be days you're like ecstatic, you're euphoric, and there's going to be days where you're going to be like depressed and just terrified. So just being able to temper yourself for all that is good.
Well, that certainly sounds like an adventure.
Last thing on that point too, just make sure if you do find a co-founder, find the right person. I've heard so many stories of people like falling out, co-founders falling out, things, drama unfolding, things happen all the time. It's just, they don't necessarily even have to be your friend. Sometimes people think, oh, if I just start a company with my best friend, we're like on the same wavelength, everything's perfect, this is going to work. I've tried that in the past. I think that can actually get in the way of things sometimes, just because you have expectations and other things. Yeah, I think my co-founders and I all arrived in like a purely business mindset from the get-go and became friends later on in the process versus the other way around. So making sure you're just aligned with your co-founders because they make or break everything.
How can you tell if someone is the right fit for you when it comes to being a co-founder using a very short amount of time?
It's difficult. Sometimes you could get it wrong. It could be like dating, like maybe everything looks right at the beginning and it like doesn't work out like 6 months down the road. That's possible. Just have like some criteria in your head for your personality and the type of person you want to work with. In general, someone who's willing to put in the work, someone who's able to compromise on things as well. It's good to have strong ideas, but to loosely hold them if like someone else comes up with good counterpoints and being able to hear out other people, that's good. Having the ability to be flexible is huge. And yeah, just having dedication. I think just having that tenacity, seeing someone else who cares as much. I think a lot of it's just like they need to care about the product or the business as much as you do. If there's a mismatch there, then that can just be difficult. Just making sure you have the same vision basically going forward.
Do you believe that sometimes people have a finite amount of energy in their life, or AKA passion? So you might begin with the same vision, but eventually, what if your co-founders change and their vision for the company or for whatever they want to do in life also change? How do you adapt to that?
Yeah, ideally the company adapts to that as well. Hopefully, but I've known co-founders that like start families and things, and they've had other priorities come into their lives, which is totally fine because I think this sustained early period. Like I know I mentioned like how we grinded in the first year. Like that's not meant to be a forever thing. Like no one should be doing that perpetually. People should be able to give each other space. I love that when my co-founders go on vacation or they take some time off for themselves because that's good. Like I know that's good for them. It's good for the company too. Yeah, in terms of like product alignment, I think just if there's some like key things that you just can't resolve or go past, you might have to just part ways or do something. That's like the nuclear option though. That's like the worst case scenario. sometimes it's worth just like trusting others and just taking a go at it. Yeah, it's really case by case. I can't give you some like general broad sweeping advice because I think it really depends on the context, and no one's going to know it better than you at the moment.
So, you know what's so funny today? Earlier today, I interviewed another gentleman at realtor.ca, and he's I think the director of marketing there. And the conversation ended with how a lot of these business philosophies also apply to the world of dating. So, Tyler, I'm just wondering, what business philosophy do you think also applies to the world of dating or the art of dating?
Yeah, maybe just finding co-founders. I think I brought up that analogy earlier. Kind of, it's like it can be like dating. Everything could look good, and like I've seen people with like really good relationships, but they break it off after like 3 years, 4 years. I thought they go on forever. Things happen in life. People change. That's just a reality. But you want to just off the get go at least try to initialize it. If you're like going for marriage or something, you should try your best to align all your values and just make sure like you have your set of standards or criteria that you do have your red flags and things like that just to stick with them. And yeah, just to pick something that's you feel like is universally going to work for you.
Whatever you just said there just reminded me of the book Principles by Ray Dalio.
Yes, I actually read that book. It's a very big book.
Well, thank you so much, Tyler, for being on the show today. It was such an honor to have you here. And I look forward to launching this podcast.
Yeah, it's awesome. And just for all the potential entrepreneurs out there, I think definitely give it a try. You only live once, and sometimes it's just the opportunity cost. It doesn't hurt. Maybe if you can afford to give a year of your time, people take gap years in university all the time. So I've met many founders who just came out of high school and they've really made a great wave. So it's never too early or too late. It's just a hesitation. You just have to commit to it and take that leap of faith out there. So yeah, and thanks again for having me, Alina. I appreciate this opportunity.
Thanks, Tyler.